Hey guys, John here. We're back on the Mack. Back on the Mack. I like the way that sounds. So after our butchering that we did the other day, after we were finished, the engine wouldn't start. We didn't have our fuel pump, which is there, wouldn't come on. The engine wouldn't turn over by the key, the column on the column here, and so yeah, that had us stumped for a couple days. I was going back over all the wiring, checking grounds and stuff like that. I got jumper cables run to different grounds here and there to make sure all the grounds were properly attached. I came back with some self tappers here and here and here just to make sure. But then I remembered the other day some little sensor in the passenger kick panel that I thought had to do with the airbag, but it didn't. It ended up being the fuel pump inertia switch, which is this. It's got a reset button in the top of it, and what happens if this vehicle's in an accident, and the engine stalls, this is basically a breaker and it'll trip so that the fuel pump don't keep pumping fuel in an accident, like a rollover or a side impact or something where the engine would stall. The fuel pump would stop pumping because that would trip and break the electrical connection to the fuel pump. But that was one thing. Once I plugged that in, we had fuel pump started working, but I still had no key switch. And so I ran a hot wire to the batteries and turned the starter over. So I had the engine turn it over, but it wouldn't run. Then I thought about all this mess up here that we have unplugged from the cluster. I wonder if it goes through that gauge cluster, the key. So I'm so happy that we did not throw this away, because once I plugged the gauge cluster in, that one wire right there, then the engine turned over with the key and started. And I'm so happy because I've been tossing and turning over that little problem. I didn't really want to continue on until I figured out what the problem was. Okay, so now we have that problem figured out, and we're going to go ahead and get the rest of this cab off of here. I'll have to get the fuel pedal, which is fly-by-wire. I have to get it unhooked. The steering column, I'll have to go ahead and get it unhooked by that joint right there. And then the brake pedal, I'll get it unhooked. I've already got the foot brake, the parking brake here assembly unbolted from there and folded back to here. Just zip tied for now. So that's where we're at. We're going to continue on here. Hopefully it won't be too much longer before we have the nose, at least the nose of this thing mounted solid. That's going to require some welding and stuff up under. We get that mounted, and then we'll have to get the cab off of the old truck out there and move it in here and try to fit it up. So that's where we are. Okay, there we are with the rest of the cab off. No more cab. So at this point, we can get that other fender mounted on here and figure out how we're going to have to lower that master cylinder. We got a steering column here that's very nice and adjustable, so that should line up really to wherever we're going to need to put it to the new cab. The new cab will be right in that zone, that back of it probably. Or I say new cab, the old Mack cab. And let's see, I did get it to crank with the column, the gauge cluster. So I feel good about that. We got all our wires, our important stuff here, labeled, so we know where that goes back together. The wiring harness hanging on this drill press over here. Got those ends labeled. A lot of that we'll be able to get rid of. So a lot of cleanup work under here, I guess, and getting rid of stuff that we don't need. Like that probably, all that's lights and grounds and horns. Get a horn hanging there. Just courtesy type of stuff. Non-essential to the running of the vehicle. What's that say? Siren. A lot of stuff to remount. There's the fuse block for the outside. A couple of hoses here to reroute. Fun.